So Jesus and grandmothers have a lot in common. Both are often frozen in time. Grandmothers in living rooms with couches encased in plastic covers. Jesus cemented over by the dump truck of nostalgia. In the text for today, Jesus breaks through the cement. He shows us that he is an evolutionary, someone more interested in the future than in the past. A good grandmother is someone who imitates this evolutionary man. She, like a good grandfather, is more interested in the future than in the past. She wants children to come over and spill things on her couches. She wants them to live in the good stories, not the frozen ones. So Warren and I had a very strange experience on May 15th, even though we weren't at home to experience it. As we were on an airplane gearing up for Portugal at Kennedy Airport, a tornado blew through Dutchess County and Upper Putnam County. Our country house is on the border of these two counties. The only one home was our dog, Sybil, who has not told us the full story yet. 60 miles north of here, we have an old stagecoach of a house. It's 279 years old. It's lasted through probably more than one tornado. The trees that were destroyed in the tornado weren't that old, and they did miss the house as they were violently uprooted. And in the picture here, and it's a terrible picture because half the tree is already cut down, but you can see the chicken coop and the complete root ball of the tree, which is from here to the piano to Micah, that big, came up, of two trees that size. And the people who are cutting off the tree, off the chicken coop, have taken half of it out already. So that gives you a sense of the dimension of it. Valerie Ross was taking care of Sybil, and Warren had driven the car down from Hopewell, and Valerie was driving the car back up during the storm, which you also experienced, I know, from talking to several of you, quite a big storm that day. Valerie had to turn around and come back down because the power was out for the next 5 days. The storm was an environmental anomaly, to put it mildly. Usually in the Hudson Valley, we get big storms in August, not in May. But there is no usual to the climate anymore. So I'm having a very hard time looking at the place I call home for the summers with the two biggest and best trees down. Those trees were more important to me and to the place than I ever imagined. They were just like the avocado and mango trees we had in a place in Miami and have just sold. When the caretaker there called to tell us that he had good news and bad news after Irma, I prayed that the house was gone and the two trees were still standing. The opposite was true. I am deep in a kind of meditation about whether to behave as a gardener, the one who left a very tidy place when she left for Europe. It was beautiful, not a weed in sight, no mess, no fuss. Or to behave as an environmentalist or an evolutionary about these trees. You see, things happen. Bad things happen. Change environmentally can be sudden or it can be slow. I accuse people of cementing Jesus. How dare I cement my own backyard? Why is my place supposed to stay like a good gardener would leave it. And Puerto Ricans have to live without power for that long. Why am I having such a hard time? Well, one of the trees broke the chicken coop in half, and the other only took a bit of the roof on the south side, and they both missed the peonies and the irises. Most of our neighbors weren't so lucky. We were on a plane to Europe, for God's sakes. We didn't know till morning what had happened. Most of my neighbors are getting brand new roofs out of the disaster. Our little road, Miller Hill, was closed for a full week. So what is it with me being so upset about 2 big trees and 21 smaller trees and a big fat mess? It's not Puerto Rico. I also have insurance and I have money, and I can clean up the joint and get it back into garden fashion in 3 to 6 months, working every day, or $5,000. But what am I supposed to do about climate change and the next storm and Sybil's PTSD? I think I need to become a better grandmother, one more interested in the future than she is in the past, one dedicated to God's preferred future in the way that Jesus was and is, one that assumes that ecological brilliance is the end game. That's where we're going. You see, evolution is the art of constant adaptation towards God's preferred future of glory, the city of God. Gardening is just a little too tidy and a little too short-term. Eden was small enough for gardeners, but Zion only wants evolutionaries. So Keen Berger has written a book about grandmothering. Many of you who know her know that she's been working on it for some time. And she shared the preface with me. And I'm just going to give you a taste of a few lines in it. And when I put the sermon up on the web, the whole preface will be there and you can look at it. Every word in it is worth reading. She says that seismic social changes have recently disconnected many grandmothers from many grandchildren. Families have empty holes where grandmothers could be. And she goes on, I am a developmental psychologist. For decades, I have studied, taught, read, and written about human families. That gives me an advantage. I consider all I have learned as I listen to my children and my grandchildren whom I love. And then in her dedication, she says, grandmothers are older women who care deeply about the young. Some such women are not biological grandmothers, and some older women are grandmothers only in the technical genetic sense. This book is dedicated to the former, all older women with the vision, the hope, and the power. We live in a time when our species is multiply handicapped. It is not an evolutionary moment. It is a devolutionary moment. Today is graduation day at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. My rabbi friend in Miami told me that he sees child sacrifice in the biblical sense in the school shootings. And I said, Mitch, you have to give a lecture about this. And he did at his temple, and it was astonishing 2 weeks after the shootings to hear him go through text by text, showing that it was child sacrifice. Our children are scared to go to school. Why should teenagers have to sue the government for a future? Is that not absurd? Why? Because odd tornadoes are brewing everywhere, and not just in Putnam County, and not just in Puerto Rico, and not just in Miami, but socially as well as environmentally. Yes, it's good for old trees to get out of the way. grandparents are not supposed to live forever. We also live and die to clear the way for our young. We clear out for a reason. It's not for progress so much as it is for difference. Evolution adapts not to make things better so much as to make them constantly different. An example. I got invited to consult with a former congregation of mine that has a great organ, and they were having a fuss about buying a digital organ. And I was astonished on the phone call to hear a 90-year-old woman, someone I knew very, very well, say, "I will miss the sounds of my old familiar organ, but won't a digital organ allow us to go to a more multicultural worship service?" And isn't that a good idea? And because of her age and her poise and her sanity in saying that, she prevailed. And people shut up about getting the new digital organ. You go, Grandma. You clear, Grandma. Good grandparents encourage the little children to come and clear a path for them. We don't train them. We mentor them as they mentor us. We learn from them as well as teaching them. Mutual mentoring is adaptive. One-way mentoring is sneakily progressive. I was talking to a 13-year-old the other day. She said to me that when she hears the word drug ed, she groans. I knew that my own kids hated sex ed and had the funniest things in the world to say about it, as the schools in which they were repeated the same curriculum in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade. They would all get tummy aches when they had to go to sex ed or drug ed. Now I hear that foundations want to do something about the Me Too movement, and guess what they want to do? Train HR people to do better management of the problem. Seriously? Is that what an old tree would do? It's naive. Sex ed, drug ed, and HR programs do not do what grandparents need to do. So next Sunday will be Children's Sunday at Judson. Whether you are a parent or not, you could be like Andy France, a grandparent, if there ever was one. But imagine, not just my trees, imagine having to go to the children's service in Parkland, Florida, or Newtown, Connecticut. Imagine. Instead, imagine God's preferable future every time you come to worship here, no matter what happened the week before. Instead of condemning the future and praising our own pasts, we bless the future, we adore the future. Good grandparents don't say things like, "Oh God, things used to be so much better then. They're so much worse now. Why can't those children pull up their pants?" We behave like strong old trees, and when we go down, our children are sad to see us go, but confident that ecological brilliance is the next step on their way, because that's what we left behind with them. We care more about their way than about our way. Our first hymn today marched us to Zion, a great evolutionary hymn, I think. The last stanza of our last hymn today will announce, "For thus it was, is now, and shall be evermore." Amen.